My narcissist brother created a fake business website for my inherited farmhouse and started taking investor money. Update. He's in federal prison, but my parents blame me. Hi everyone. Today's story will blow your mind, but really quick, if you enjoy this content, hit that subscribe button. Channel's been a bit quiet lately, and your support keeps it all going. Let's jump in. Original post. My brother thinks he's entitled to my inherited property because he's the natural leader of our family. I never thought I'd be writing something like this, but I need perspective from people who aren't caught up in my family's twisted dynamics. I'm James, 28M, and I'm dealing with a situation involving my younger brother Michael, 24M, and our parents Robert, 56M, and Patricia, 54F, that's spiraling out of control. 6 months ago, my grandfather passed away. He was the only person in my family who ever really understood me. While my parents spent my entire childhood comparing me unfavorably to my golden child brother, my grandfather quietly supported my choices. He appreciated that I chose to become a teacher instead of chasing money like Michael, who dropped out of college twice to pursue various revolutionary business ventures that all failed spectacularly. In his will, my grandfather left me his 40-acre farmhouse property in rural Virginia. It's a beautiful place where I spent summers as a kid, complete with a restored 1920s farmhouse, a barn, and pristine woodland. The property has been in our family for 4 generations. My grandfather specifically stated in his will that he was leaving it to me because he knew I would preserve its character and continue the family tradition of stewardship. The reading of the will was where everything started going wrong. Michael's face turned red when the lawyer announced I was inheriting the property. He immediately stood up and declared that there must be some mistake because he was the natural leader of our generation and the only one with a vision to maximize the property's potential. My parents immediately backed him up, with my mother saying it was such a shame that Grandpa's mental decline had clouded his judgment in his final years. For the record, my grandfather was sharp as a tack until the day he died. For the past 6 months, Michael has been relentless. He shows up at my apartment at least twice a week with elaborate business plans, architectural renderings, and financial projections for what he calls Willow Creek luxury retreats. He's convinced that the farmhouse should be converted into an exclusive corporate retreat center that would charge $5,000 per weekend for leadership transformation experiences. He actually told me, with a straight face, that he's doing me a favor by taking this burden off my hands because I lack the entrepreneurial mindset to see its true value. The worst part is how my parents enable him. Every family dinner becomes a lecture about how I'm wasting my potential and squandering family resources. My father loves to remind me that Michael was already making real money through his cryptocurrency investments at 20. He lost everything in a crash, but they don't mention that, while I was just studying books. My mother constantly sends me articles about teachers who quit their jobs to become entrepreneurs, with messages like, "It's never too late to find your ambition, sweetie." Last week, things escalated. Michael sent me a formal letter, yes, an actual letter on letterhead he designed for his non-existent company, proposing that I transfer the property to him in exchange for a consultant role in his business that would pay me $500 a month for the first year, with potential for growth based on company performance. He presented this as an incredibly generous offer, saying most people wouldn't even include family members who don't contribute value to their ventures. When I declined, he accused me of being jealous of his success and trying to hold him back because I'm threatened by his natural leadership abilities. He actually said, "This is why Grandpa's decision was clearly compromised. He chose sentiment over strategy. A real businessman would recognize that I'm the only one in this family with a vision to honor his legacy properly." My parents have now joined his campaign. They've been calling me daily, alternating between guilt trips about destroying Michael's dreams and lectures about how I'm being selfish by keeping a property I don't even know how to monetize. My mother actually cried on the phone yesterday, saying she doesn't understand how she raised such an unambitious son who would rather play with children all day than build something meaningful. The thing is, I don't want to monetize the property. I want to live there, maintain the organic garden my grandfather started, maybe run some free educational programs for local schools. I have savings and my teaching salary is enough to maintain the place. But according to my family, this makes me an underachiever who's afraid of success. Michael has started telling extended family members that I'm temporarily managing his property while he secures funding. He's created social media profiles for Willow Creek luxury retreats, where he posts photos taken during his uninvited visits to the farmhouse, calling himself the founder and CEO. Several relatives have congratulated him on his inheritance and his innovative vision for the family property. I'm at my wit's end. I love my family despite everything, but their constant dismissal of my choices and their worship of Michael's delusions is exhausting. Michael genuinely believes he's entitled to everything because he considers himself superior to everyone else. He once told me that natural leaders like him have a responsibility to take resources from followers like me and use them more effectively for the greater good, which always somehow benefits him personally. Am I crazy for wanting to keep my inherited property? Should I just give in to keep the peace? The daily harassment is affecting my work and mental health, but I also feel like I'd be betraying my grandfather's trust if I let Michael turn his beloved farmhouse into some corporate playground for his ego. Update 1. 3 weeks later, he's now advertising MY property as his business. I want to thank everyone who responded to my original post. Your comments gave me the strength to stand firm, though the situation has deteriorated dramatically since then. 2 weeks ago, I discovered that Michael had escalated beyond social media posts. A colleague at school asked me about my career change after seeing a professionally produced website for Willow Creek luxury retreats. The site features drone footage of my property, floor plans of the farmhouse with proposed renovations, and a booking system for 2025 grand opening reservations. Michael is listed as CEO, with a bio describing him as a visionary entrepreneur transforming family heritage into tomorrow's premier leadership destination. The website includes a section called Our Story that's completely fabricated. According to Michael's version, our grandfather was an innovative businessman who always dreamed of creating a retreat center but never had the resources. It claims Michael promised our grandfather on his deathbed that he would fulfill this dream, and that the property was entrusted to him for this purpose. There's even a photoshopped image of Michael and our grandfather shaking hands in front of the farmhouse, a photo that never happened because Michael rarely visited. When I confronted him, Michael was completely unfazed. He explained that he's manifesting success through positive visualization, and that creating the website is part of his strategic market positioning. He actually lectured me about how small thinkers like me don't understand that perception creates reality in business. When I told him to take the website down immediately, he laughed and said I should be grateful he's not charging me for the free marketing he's providing for our family's asset. My parents' reaction was even worse. They're thrilled about the website. My mother shared it on her Facebook with a long post about how proud she is of Michael's initiative and forward-thinking approach. She wrote, "While some people sit on inherited wealth, my son Michael sees the potential to create something magnificent that will employ dozens and bring prosperity to the community." My father called me after seeing my angry response to Mom's post. He said I'm being pathetically jealous, and that I should be learning from Michael instead of trying to sabotage him. He actually suggested I should transfer the property to Michael immediately to avoid further embarrassment to the family, when investors realize I'm the weak link holding back the project. The local newspaper picked up the story after Michael sent them a press release. The article, titled "Young Entrepreneur Brings Innovation to Historic Family Farm," features a photo of Michael standing in front of MY Farmhouse, arms crossed, looking like he owns the place. In the article, he's quoted saying he's negotiating with family members to ensure everyone benefits from this transformation, and that he expects to break ground on renovations by spring. Several of Michael's friends, who he calls his advisory board, have been posting on LinkedIn about their involvement in this exciting new venture. One of them, who apparently has a background in wellness consulting, posted about conducting an energy assessment of the property last weekend. I wasn't even aware they had been there until I saw the photos online. I've started receiving calls from local contractors asking about the renovation timeline. A catering company reached out to discuss partnership opportunities for the retreat center. The Regional Small Business Association invited Michael to speak at their next meeting about revitalizing rural properties through innovative hospitality concepts. Yesterday was the breaking point. I drove out to the farmhouse to check on things and found Michael there with 3 people in suits. He was giving them a tour, pointing out where the meditation pavilion would go and discussing the conversion of the barn into a conference center with authentic rustic charm. When I confronted him, he introduced me to his guests as his brother who's helping with the property transfer logistics. One of the suited individuals, who introduced herself as Jennifer from some investment firm, asked me directly about the timeline for the ownership restructuring. When I told her that there was no restructuring and that I was the sole owner with no intention of selling or partnering, Michael quickly intervened, saying I was still processing the emotional aspects of our grandfather's passing and that he was handling the business side to give me space to grieve. After they left, Michael turned on me with pure rage. He accused me of trying to humiliate him and destroy his credibility. He said I clearly don't understand how business works and that he's been building momentum that I'm selfishly destroying. He threatened that if I didn't stop interfering with his negotiations, he would have no choice but to involve lawyers to prove that our grandfather was mentally incompetent when he made his will. My parents are now fully involved in the pressure campaign. They've threatened to cut me out of all family events if I don't stop being vindictive toward Michael. My mother sent me a text saying she's ashamed to have raised someone so petty and small-minded, and that she tells her friends I work in administration rather than admit I'm just a teacher because it's less embarrassing. I've tried explaining that what Michael is doing could be considered fraud, but they dismiss this as me being dramatic and negative. According to them, Michael is simply being proactive and showing initiative, while I'm standing in the way of progress because I'm threatened by his success. I've started documenting everything: the website, the social media posts, the press coverage, and the unauthorized visits to the property. I've also installed security cameras at the farmhouse after finding evidence that Michael has been bringing people there regularly without my knowledge. The footage I've reviewed shows him there at least a dozen times in the past month, often with different groups of people. I'm meeting with a lawyer next week to discuss my options. I hate that it's come to this, but I don't see any other choice. Michael seems to genuinely believe that if he acts like he owns the property long enough, it will somehow become true. And my parents are so blinded by their favoritism that they're enabling what could be criminal behavior. Final update: 2 months later, the investors, the forged documents, and the nuclear option. This will be my final update because the situation has reached its conclusion, though not in any way I could have anticipated when I first posted here. After my last update, I did meet with a lawyer, specifically a property attorney named David who specialized in inheritance disputes. He was shocked by the evidence I'd compiled and immediately sent a cease and desist letter to Michael, demanding he remove all online content falsely claiming ownership of my property and stop accessing the farmhouse without permission. Michael's response was to double down in ways that still astound me. First, he showed up at my school during my lunch break with 2 people he introduced as his investment partners, Brian and Melissa, both in their 40s and apparently wealthy from tech industry exits. In front of my colleagues, he loudly announced that he was there to finalize the family property agreement, and that he was disappointed I was making him handle this at my workplace. When I refused to engage and asked security to escort them out, he told Brian and Melissa that I was having another emotional episode and that it was part of the grieving process. That evening, my parents called an emergency family meeting at their house. When I arrived, I found Michael there with Brian, Melissa, and another man introduced as their lawyer, Thomas. My parents had also invited my aunts Jennifer and Linda, my uncle John, and several cousins, all of whom had been told this was an intervention to help me overcome my irrational attachment to the farmhouse. The meeting was actually an ambush. Michael had prepared a presentation, complete with PowerPoint, about why I was harming the family's financial future by refusing to monetize the property. He presented graphs showing projected revenues, architectural plans for the retreat center, and testimonials from future clients who had already expressed interest. Brian and Melissa spoke about their commitment to investing $2 million in the project, contingent on proper ownership structure. The climax came when Michael produced a document that he claimed was a preliminary agreement I had signed months ago agreeing to explore the retreat center concept. I had never seen this document before in my life. When I said it was forged, Michael put on a performance worthy of an Oscar, telling everyone that my jealousy was causing memory problems and that he was concerned about my mental health. My mother actually started crying, saying she knew something was wrong with me because no rational person would turn down such an opportunity. My father demanded I sign the real transfer documents right then to stop embarrassing the family. My aunts and uncles lectured me about family loyalty and supporting each other's dreams. My cousin Sarah, who's a nurse, actually offered to recommend a therapist for my obvious depression and paranoia. I walked out without signing anything, but not before telling them all that I had security footage of Michael trespassing on my property and that my lawyer would be in touch. The room erupted. Michael accused me of betraying family by involving lawyers. My parents said if I pursued legal action against Michael, I would be dead to them. Brian and Melissa looked uncomfortable and quickly excused themselves, saying they needed to reassess the situation. Over the next week, the harassment intensified. Michael posted on social media about how family jealousy was threatening to destroy a dream that would benefit the entire community. He started a GoFundMe called Save Willow Creek from Family Greed, where he claimed I was a city elite trying to keep the property vacant rather than create local jobs. Several people actually donated before the platform took it down for violating their terms of service. My parents sent daily texts alternating between threats and guilt trips. They involved other relatives, who began calling to express their disappointment in my selfishness. Someone, I suspect Michael, left printed copies of the forged agreement under my car windshield, in my mailbox at school, and even mailed one to my principal with a note saying I was mentally unstable and dangerous. Then came the nuclear revelation. David, my lawyer, had been doing his due diligence and discovered something extraordinary. Michael hadn't just forged one document, he had created an entire paper trail. He had forged rental agreements for the farmhouse dated 6 months ago, fake bank statements showing deposits from these non-existent rentals, and even filed tax documents claiming income from the property. He had essentially created a parallel reality where he had been managing the property since our grandfather's death. But here's where his narcissism became his downfall. He had been sloppy. The notary stamp on the forged rental agreements belonged to a notary who had died 2 years ago. The bank statements showed deposits on federal holidays when banks were closed. The tax documents were filed using my social security number, which he had apparently obtained from our parents. David immediately involved the FBI's white-collar crime division and the IRS. What Michael had done wasn't just fraud, it was identity theft, tax fraud, and wire fraud when he used online platforms to solicit investments based on forged documents. The federal investigators were particularly interested in Brian and Melissa, wondering if they were victims or accomplices. The investigation moved quickly. Within 2 weeks, federal agents had interviewed Michael, my parents, and the potential investors. They seized Michael's computers and found elaborate forgeries for multiple business ventures over the years, including fake contracts, manufactured references, and doctored financial statements. He had apparently been running small-scale frauds for years, but the Farmhouse scheme was his most ambitious. Brian and Melissa, it turned out, were victims. They had already given Michael $50,000 as a good faith deposit for the project, which he had spent on luxury car rentals, designer clothes, and gambling trips to Atlantic City, all while posting on social media about investing in the future of Willow Creek. The confrontation with reality broke Michael in a way I'd never seen before. When the FBI arrested him at our parents' house, he apparently had a complete meltdown, screaming that everyone was too stupid to recognize genius, and that he was being persecuted for thinking bigger than small minds could comprehend. He insisted, even as they handcuffed him, that the farmhouse was rightfully his because he was the only one who deserved it. My parents' reaction was perhaps even more shocking. Instead of finally seeing Michael for what he was, they blamed me entirely. My mother called me sobbing, saying I had destroyed our family and ruined Michael's life over jealousy. My father sent a single text, "You're no son of mine." They hired an expensive lawyer for Michael and spent their retirement savings on his defense, still convinced that he was the victim of my vindictiveness. Michael eventually pled guilty to multiple federal charges in exchange for a reduced sentence of 18 months in federal prison, 3 years of supervised release, and mandatory restitution to Brian and Melissa. At his sentencing, he gave a speech about how he was a visionary persecuted by mediocrity, and that his only crime was believing in excellence. The judge was not impressed. My relationship with my parents is completely severed. They've told the entire extended family that I set up Michael and had him falsely imprisoned because I couldn't stand his success. Most of the family believes them, though a few cousins have quietly reached out to say they always thought something was off about Michael's stories. The farmhouse is now truly mine, free and clear. The security cameras are gone, replaced with a simple alarm system. I've started the restoration work my grandfather had planned, using his own sketches and notes I found in the attic. This spring, I'm planting the expanded organic garden he had mapped out, and I've partnered with local schools to bring students for agricultural education programs. Last week, I received a letter from Michael in prison. He wrote that he's forgiven me for my betrayal, and that when he gets out, he'll reclaim what's rightfully his through legal means. He signed it, Future Owner, Willow Creek Luxury Retreats. I gave the letter to my lawyer to add to the restraining order file. I've learned a lot through this experience. I've learned that narcissists will create their own reality and defend it even when faced with irrefutable evidence. I've learned that enablers can be just as destructive as the narcissists they protect. And I've learned that sometimes, protecting yourself means accepting that the family you were born into isn't the family you need. The farmhouse is peaceful now. I spend weekends there, working on the garden, repairing the old barn, and hosting dinners for my chosen family friends and colleagues who supported me through this ordeal. My grandfather's spirit feels present in every sunrise over the fields, in every creak of the old floorboards, in every bloom in the garden he loved. Sometimes I think about Michael in his federal cell, probably telling his cellmates about the empire he's going to build when he gets out. I think about my parents, sitting in their empty house, polishing the trophy of their golden child who turned out to be pyrite. I feel sad for them sometimes, but mostly I feel free. The property is now properly secured legally. I've created a trust that ensures it can never be taken by family members, with clear instructions that it should become a community education center if something happens to me. I've also documented everything, every forged document, every threat, every piece of evidence, in case Michael tries anything when he's released. To those asking about therapy, yes, I'm seeing someone to process the trauma of discovering your entire family would rather enable a criminal than support you. It's helping, slowly. I'm learning that my worth isn't determined by my family's opinion of me, that choosing a teaching career over money doesn't make me unambitious, and that protecting yourself isn't selfish. To those asking about my parents, I check their social media occasionally. They're still posting about Michael's wrongful imprisonment and their pride in their entrepreneurial son. They've never once acknowledged what he actually did. They're now telling people I'm dead to explain my absence from family events. In a way, I suppose that's true. The son who sought their approval is dead. The man who emerged from this ordeal is someone they never knew. Thank you to everyone who told me to stand my ground. Your comments gave me strength when my entire family was gaslighting me. You helped me see that I wasn't crazy, that what was happening wasn't normal, and that I deserved to keep what was rightfully mine. The farmhouse stands strong, just as my grandfather knew it would. It weathered the storm of Michael's delusions and my parents' enablement. Now it's entering a new chapter, one of education, growth, and genuine community benefit, not the false promises of a narcissist's fantasy. It's exactly what my grandfather wanted, and exactly what Michael could never understand. Sometimes the greatest success is simply being a good steward of what you've been given. This is my final update. Michael gets out in 16 months, but I'm ready for whatever comes next. I have legal protection, security measures, and most importantly, the knowledge that I stood up to a narcissist and his enablers and won. The farmhouse is mine, the truth is documented, and I'm finally free from the toxic dynamics that nearly destroyed my life. To anyone dealing with similar situations, document everything. Get legal help. Don't let them gaslight you into doubting yourself. And remember, family isn't always blood. Sometimes your real family are the people who believe you when everyone else is calling you crazy. Thank you all for being part of my journey. I'm closing this chapter and opening a new one, in a peaceful farmhouse where narcissists and their enablers have no power, and where my grandfather's true legacy of simple decency and quiet stewardship can finally flourish.